Welcome to Blue Grit Radio, the podcast that explores making better cops for a better community. I'm your host, Eric Tung. I've been an active police officer since 2007. We will dive into the aspects of police culture, health and wellness, leadership, and mindset. You'll hear from experts not only from policing, but all industries as they relate to being our best with purpose, passion, and positivity. Join me as we share stories, lessons, and advice so we can all be better for ourselves, our teams, our families, and our communities. Ladies and gents, welcome back. This is your host, Eric, and today I'm joined by Detective Tessa Melville. Tessa, thanks for coming on the show. Man.
Thank you for having me.
You're ready, like a lot of reschedules. This is what happens with busy people.
Yes. God, that's just an understatement, but that's okay. That's life. That's showbiz, baby.
Yeah, it's first responder life, it's call out life, and you're in a detective role now, and things are busy.
Mom life, yep, all of it.
Yeah, mom life for sure. So, and that's a lot of what we're talking about. So, I just wanted to have you on for many reasons, but for a lot of the listeners, we're going to be featuring kind of your story and what brought you into this life of service. You've been a cop. You're going to talk about how long you've done that and your military career prior to that, but without further ado, if you want to just intro a little bit of your origin and what brought you into all this uniformed military and law enforcement lifestyle.
So I always joke, like, I've lived many lives and somehow I'm only 32 or already 32. I don't know. I feel quite young still, but
you're young.
Leave that to whoever. I feel like it. Sometimes I feel like I've lived 7 decades, but I grew up in the suburbs, like in Puyallup. Typical, like, pretty privileged lifestyle family, middle class, upper middle class, went to a not very diverse high school, lived just this kind of life in my bubble, not really aware of like the outside world, too much. And so my stepdad is a cop, at Lakewood. My mom was a 911 dispatcher. She just retired 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So
it's
she
a big
serves
deal, a long career.
Oh, yes. I think it was 34 years, which I could never imagine.
Shout out to the dispatchers out there. They don't get enough love.
They don't get any love.
Hardly any, yeah.
Oh, I could not imagine doing that life because I'm very, like, visual. Like, I need to see what's happening in front of me and to just hear it on the audio or the cops. Like, oh, I could not do it.
You imagine the worst, right?
Every time.
You can't see it. You can't get there. You can't physically interact with it.
You have no idea what's going on. You're just listening to silence, which could be seconds, but feels like hours. I could never do that. And so she did that. I have an uncle that's in law enforcement also. That being said, grew up like in this law enforcement family, very strict, and rightfully so, safety-wise. I can understand now being a cop, but never considered anything to do with law enforcement. Not even remotely, not close, nothing. I wanted to be in medicine, but I kind of struggled in school. I'd later find out I had ADHD, so that kind of answered a few questions.
It makes it hard to do traditional school with that, yeah.
And I wanted to get there as fast as I could without putting in the time or effort. I said, you know what? I'm just going to join the Navy. I'm going to be a Navy corpsman. Surprising everyone. No one thought that was in my journey. I was a cheerleader. Very preppy, not my vibe at all. But I have a taste for the spontaneous, and I decided, nope, I'm going to join the Navy and see what happens. So I did that. For those who don't know, Navy corpsman. So the Marine Corps does not have their own medical support. They enlist Navy enlisted personnel and officers as well, but I'll just stick to enlisted. And they act as their medical support. So I went into that thinking I'd maybe be on a ship or a clinic or something. And they gave us this option. They're like, hey, you could go to this special training. It's really difficult. Basically Marine Corps boot camp to only work with the Marines. So I went and did that. And again, just throwing a curveball to everyone in my life and what they expected from me. So I worked with the Marines for years, then ended up being in a clinic, and I didn't even explain it. So I specialize in tactical field care. So massive hemorrhage, amputation, airway intervention, all that kind of stuff. I didn't see a lick of anything while I was in. I didn't deploy. I was stateside the entire time. I got to go to a bunch of different states and move around, which brought me back here after I got out of the Navy. I had my daughter a year or two before I got out. I was just not interested in doing any deployments, anything like that. So I got out, moved back home because that would be easier for me, and had kind of a quarter-life crisis. I worked like as a receptionist at like a major hospital here, planning to do like school at the same time. And I saw like what modern medicine actually looks like. Not something I was interested in doing whatsoever. And I played around with ideas like maybe I could just be a dispatcher like my mom. And for the reasons we had talked about earlier, I was like, I don't think I want to do that.
Yeah.
My stepdad was like, well, have you thought about being a cop? I was like, I don't know. Maybe I just don't think I could do it. Like, I don't think I'm cut out for it, ironically, because I just...
What part of that?
What?
What part of that stuck out?
Being a female, for sure.
Yeah.
And it's hilarious because I was very successful when I was with the Marines. Like, I was one of 2 females that made it. We started with 17.
Yeah.
So I don't really know where.
People?
17 females, and then there's probably another 20 males. So we had a bunch of males drop out, and then I was one of 2 females that made it out of 17. So I don't know where I got that idea, but it was in my head somewhere.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I don't know, like, I don't think I could do this thing. Like, it's a bunch of dudes. We'll see what happens. But he was like, you know what? It's really hard to get in right now. This was in 2017. Why don't you just apply, see what happens? It won't be like another year until you get it. 3 months later, I was offered a job.
Look at that.
And so I was like, okay, here we go. Which actually kind of works out for my personality, just to dive into something.
Yeah.
So I did that, and I started at Kent. And I've been on now for 7 years, coming on 7 years.
Nice. It's gone fast.
So fast. I still feel like, I mean, in most regards, 7-year cop is still a little rookie baby, but
well,
it doesn't
yeah,
feel like
and it's like it's a common joke. I think we said it on the show before, but like working in Kent or the South King County, or definitely areas of North Pierce County, yeah, it's like dog years, and so like, and you can definitely, and we'll get there, but you definitely experienced a lot in just your first few years, first couple years, but before we keep going, what stuck out to you as like why or how your process went so quickly? Like where did you find success in the testing process? Because there are so many applicants that listen in.
I think the military service helped. Being a female helps. It's a male-dominated field. We need that diversity with females. Not something that I actually originally agreed with. I was almost like an anti-feminist at the time, admittedly, but not now. But I was honest. I didn't pretend that I was there for anything other than what I was there for. And I was honest about why I wanted to be in it. I miss the military camaraderie. Like, I miss that family-like feel that most police departments have. I wanted to do something where I wasn't sitting at a desk every day. It's good for my ADHD brain, like, to be moving around, something different every single day. Yeah, I think it really just came back to just being honest why I was there. I didn't pretend to fluff up any of my answers. And I think that's kind of a core feeling, or what you should go into it, having that mentality.
Yeah. From my purview, knowing you for many years, but not directly supervising you, so kind of being like on the sidelines per se, like I've noticed pretty early on, you had this strong confidence about you, even with a couple years on. Like, you talk about the Navy corpsman background, and I remember you running through combat first aid to the whole department in chunks, and you just were there and you just owned it. You owned the space and you owned the material, and you clearly knew it so well. Do you think that you had that earlier on? Because I didn't really know you at the beginning or have much interaction with you, or did that just grow over time?
Grew over time. No, I was probably quite insecure at the beginning, very anxious. And then once I hit the street and I started experiencing all the different things you see as a cop in Kent, it really gives you a different perspective for the rest of your life. Some things that you think you should be anxious about are no longer a problem because it could be so much worse. that's really where things changed. I was never this confident my entire life until I started Kent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think about that for myself a lot. Like I came in as like this kid, this boy at 21 years old and just trying to learn so much about the world, and then really getting those like hard truths and like cool life lessons, I suppose, like really fast and really early on. Like the fire hose was like full blast working in an area like ours. I think that's true, right? Like I like that silver lining that you, as you put it, where you realize like some things aren't that big a deal, right? There's like more important things. And there is a other side of the coin, or like the other side of the double-edged sword, where we know in first responder life, oftentimes like our family problems or like our friends' issues, it kind of gets met with like an eye roll, like sometimes literally, and we got to fight that back because these are big deals, but it is hard to keep things in context when the things you deal with are oftentimes like so critical in life or death.
Yes, yeah, and they say it at the beginning. They say it over and over and over again. They're like, "Hey, like, make sure to keep those lives outside of law enforcement." And when you're met with that, and they, you know what? This is a good analogy. They always say like, you go to a traffic accident and the people involved like are fully panicking. Then you're like, "What is going on? Like, why are you freaking out about this?" Because I just left like a stabbing or a shooting. And you realize like this is like their worst day. Yeah. This is what they know. And it's hard, but you have to remember that with like your forensic family too. Like their problems are their worst problems like in their life right now. It's not comparable to like your experiences like as a cop. So that took years for me to figure out, and I'm still figuring it out. But yeah, I definitely know exactly what you're talking about with that.
Yeah, I like the awareness and the humility there, right? You're like, hey, it's a work in progress. And I think that it always will be. Like, you always need those reminders, and we're going to start bleeding over towards cynicism or, like the over the top, maybe sarcasm, right? That's a great example, the car wreck, because how many times we, myself included, have gotten frustrated with like, I literally asked you for 3 documents, like get it together. Like there's no airbag deployment. You're okay. Yeah. But yeah, it is like, it truly is traumatic given the context where if you've never experienced that or anything like it and you're 45, like it is what it is. Right. And so who am I to judge or let my judgment kind of bleed into my own emotions? Like that's super unfair.
Oh yeah. And you'll see it too. And again, it's almost a cliche, but, you go through like these phases as a cop. Kent's a little accelerated, but usually those 5 to 7 year officers and get really jaded, and it takes like a lot of conscientiousness to like bring yourself back. And luckily, I'm in a good place of peace at the moment. But being completely honest, like that's not been the case my entire career. It just is what it is. But yeah, you have to take a step back and look at the big picture often. Yeah.
So for me, like I picked Kent, like I wanted that real deal. Like I grew up a bit more sheltered like you, like a, nice suburban area, pretty low crime, quieter town. And like I wanted that. Like I had an option to go to a small town, and I could wait and turn that down and go for Kent or like another place around here. And I chose that. Like, was there an element of that for you, or what brought you to Kent?
So I applied to, I want to say like 6 different agencies. The first 5, teeny tiny departments, like 6 cops total.
Oh, wow.
And then I picked Kent.
Like very small.
Don't know. I think it was just looking at PST or something. And I was like, oh, I'll just go around here. And I talked to my mom because, like I said earlier, she was a dispatcher for the South King County area. I was like, what do you think about Kent? She was like, she always loved working with Kent. She was friends with so many officers that are still there now and have left since too. But I got in with the interview, and I had done like a chief's interview, I think, with another city at this point. So Kent's like, I'll fully admit, Kent was like at the bottom of my list. So I thought, I was like, I just want an easy, low key. And again, it's not even close to my personality. I can't believe that's how I thought, but just easy, low key, day to day. I did a ride along with Mark Williams.
Oh man.
And Josh Bava.
Oh yeah.
And
like 2 very different exposures, but like awesome. I'm like, I love this. Like I'm painting this picture in my mind now. Yeah.
And it was the same day because I actually started with Bava, who's Commander Bava now. Fantastic. And we went to a hotel and we contacted this guy. They wanted him out because he hadn't checked out. And we opened his bag and he had a giant gallon-sized bag completely full of meth. I was like, whoa. Me being from my sheltered life, like even the need, like you don't see stuff like that.
Yeah, Pop Rocks? What are those?
Yeah.
Nice.
And then I think a gun and a few other things. Like he's like, you're under arrest. And I was like, whoa, that's kind of cool.
This is real.
Yeah. And so he had like got tied up with evidence on that. And then I ended up writing with Mark Williams, who's been a family friend for years. I didn't know him personally, but my mom knows him very well.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just explaining to me, there was just such a good vibe. Like I didn't feel that at the other chief's interview I'd gone to. It was just a feeling. It's hard to describe, but
yeah,
I was like, I think
sure.
This is the place. This is where I want to pursue and go apply here.
Yeah,
so that's what I did.
Yeah, I had some really similar where it was as I was advancing through the process, and I got a ride along, and I got passed off kind of in the middle of the shift to get more exposure, and I just loved how the different field trainers, but then everyone that I interact with on the calls, right? Like as the call wraps, and then you're kind of just standing around the parking lot, but I just felt like people were so real, but they were so different, and it just felt like all these different personalities that you could just kind of get all this exposure and influence, like. And people weren't really like pouring it on. Like some were very engaging and some were just, I mean, it seemed like they were 0% trying to impress me, but they presented themselves as they were. And I love that too. Yes. And it, just to get all these different flavors of like what a cop could look like, because I had no idea.
Yeah. And you were probably the same way, but if they were trying to recruit me and it almost came off like as disingenuous, I would have been completely turned off. I would have been like, this is not for me. Yeah. So I had the same exact feeling. I was like, and people were funny, and I also liked like the department size too. I like the idea that like everyone can still know each other and be friends, but not so big that you don't know like the people you're going to calls with, but not so small that it's tense between the person you just went to the same call with over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it just really ended up just being Kent. Like, and I had zero expectations. It's kind of just how the road unfolded for me.
Well, walk us through the progression of your career, the different assignments you had, because you've held a lot of titles. The title sounds so official, but like a lot of hats in, as you said, like, yeah, kind of a shorter, kind of moderate length career now.
So I was on patrol for 6 years, ended up becoming an FTO at 3 years, which former me would think that was insane, and I did think it was insane when I applied. And I actually talked to you about it, I believe, and you encouraged me to apply. I just sometimes you'll apply for like these specialties, especially when it's training younger officers, like the new generation.
Yeah.
And you'll see people that apply, and you just know that you could offer maybe something more akin to like what you're looking for. And so I pushed to do that, and I got it. I don't know how. So I was FTO for 3 years. Hardest job I ever had by far.
For sure.
By far. I did a few other things. I've instructed like the combat first aid. I was a ABLE instructor, which is our bystander program. Mm-hmm. And then I applied for detectives, and I got there last year in June. And I'm now in the special assault unit. So crimes against children, vulnerable adults, domestic violence, sexual assault, ICAP, so internet crimes against children, all that good stuff. Yeah. All the really fun, cool stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember talking to you about FTO, and I think that it's a reluctance that not just you had, and people continue to have, right, where they get tapped. And you remember how that conversation went, or any of the talking points?
I have the email saved, but just a general idea. I can't remember the specifics.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things, and I think for listeners, whether you're new and you're coming in or you've been around for a little bit, but for me, it's recognizing that, it might feel early, but if you have people that are doing and demonstrating the right things and the doing and demonstrating the exact type of work that you want others to emulate, like you don't have to know it all. If you can teach people to do things the way you're doing them and ask the appropriate questions, like, that's great.
Yes.
That's truly what we should want in an FTO. And we do have a increasingly young culture, like past, 3 years ago when you started an FTO, where that's going to be more a trend across the nation because of all the crazy attrition. So, we can't just resign to people with the most tenure, because sometimes those aren't the right people, based on temperament or based on their own prerogatives and the energy they bring or don't bring.
And what you said at the beginning, that's so true. And I always said, and this is, I think, relevant to like a lot of different scenarios. I always thought about it like when in court, they're like, never say that you don't know. Question. I was like, no, that sounds so crazy and defensive. Yeah. Like, it's okay to not know. It's actually like very humble of you to admit that you don't know something. You're like, well, let's figure it out together. So I always told like the newer FTOs, like anyone I talk to, I'm like, don't be afraid to say you don't know something. Like, do not bullshit through it. Oh, sorry, I don't know for cussing. But
yeah, you're fine. You're fine.
Don't bullshit through it and pretend that you know, because no one knows everything about this. Every I don't know, it could be like every day, every week, you run into a different situation. You're like, oh, I have no idea how to handle this. And it still happens. Like at 7 years in, I'm still like, I've never run into this situation before. I hope people can adopt like that mentality a bit more.
Yeah, it's just human. And I think that that's just such a healthy thing for mentorship, for leadership, even if out in the community, right? Like every young cop, newer cop, or even, it doesn't even have to do with newness, but you're going to face something where you're like, you shouldn't have to expect to know every little statute and stuff. So if someone challenges you, or whether or not they challenge you, but just a person in the public's like, well, what are you talking about? Like, what about this? And what about this law? Simply saying like, I'm not sure, we don't deal with that. I've been asked that twice in 10 years or whatever the thing is. Like, it just shows, I mean, you're just leveling with someone. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, you shouldn't be expected to know everything. You shouldn't pretend. Certainly don't pretend.
No, God, no. Yeah, because I mean, that's literally like the core of our, I don't know, if you mission, whatever you want to say, like just being a cop, like the integrity behind it. You have to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You've gotten to do some cool things in, short to moderate window. I feel very much the same. I feel KPD has offered both of us a lot of opportunities, but I like to add on, not just cause. And I have my own perception as to why, as far as like the grind and how people apply themselves to get selected for things or put themselves in the right positions to build the experience. Is there any feedback that you would give to those younger officers or those people coming in? They're like, yeah, that's exactly the type of role I want to get into, or the type of progression I want to make.
Yeah, and you know what? I touched on it earlier, and I think it just comes back to being honest, like to who you are. Like, take your experiences from your life, from your job, and you can almost apply it to any type of different specialty. Like, I used my military experience and all that training I got for the first aid stuff. I got picked for the bystander stuff. I'd like to think because of my, because I was not afraid to, I don't want to say call someone out, but check people on what they're doing. And look at the big picture. This is a tough job. I mean, when I say bystander, it's kind of intervening when you think another officer is kind of losing control. And it almost sounds corny. And I always started that class. I was like, hey, listen, like this sounds kind of like a corny checkbox kind of class, but it's something we should be aware of like constantly. The emotions that go in everything, we have to be aware of each other and ourselves. So, and I think I just brought again, that honesty, just like that truth to myself with that. Yeah. So you just take what those qualities like you have and then amplify them, study on them, but bring them to the job in whatever form you can. Specialties will open up for you.
I love that positive contribution to that. And just for the listeners, and yeah, I mean, I think it's natural, especially for cops, people in the first responder community to hear a training and be like, okay, I roll, like, so you're going to, I need to get tapped out because I'm going to act out of line or something like that. Or I need to be intervened with, because I'm about to step out of policy or the law. It's not so much that, right? Of course, that we know that with our integrity and our values, but I love how it's just a simple thing that's become so socialized at our department and in culture, where people are like, oh yeah, I had to be abled. And it's literally, as just when you boil it down this way, like if someone's just screaming in your face and like even to the point where they're fighting you, right? Like a literal resistive subject. You're wrestling him into handcuffs. He or she's kicking you, spitting on you, and it's so natural, and it makes so much sense for someone else to come in the scene and be like, "Hey, you good? Why don't you go check yourself, get yourself cleaned up? Like maybe you're injured, right? Like let's pull you off, and I can come in because I'm fresh. I don't have those emotions. I might actually be able to get them to confess to all this stuff, to help the case. And so it's just like this normal, like, hey, your pressure valve needs to be released. Why not let your buddy kind of just take the helm for a bit? But I love just seeing that in practice, and we can make light to be like, no, yeah, like I felt myself getting really ramped up, and I'm glad someone else came in that didn't see the victim, that didn't hear all the
Yes.
things that were said, right?
Yes. And logically or historically, like, we've literally been doing this. Most officers have been doing this. It just sounds like corny when you put like a name on it. But and I was not immune. I tell a story when I was FTOing Isaac Hageman. He's gonna be so excited that he's name dropped on this.
You think so?
Sup, Isaac, my man.
He's gonna blow up. He's gonna go famous.
Yes, literally. He was my student, and I was dealing with a lot of personal stuff at the time. Went and dealt with this very drunk female. Can't even remember like the details of the call, but she was getting under my skin. Started popping off, and I do have a mouth on me. Like, I try and keep it under wraps sometimes, but I do. And she said something along the lines of like, I should step up on you. And she like took a step towards me and got super close to my face. I told her I was like bet or something. Like, I was like encouraging it. Like, I was thinking in my head, I was like, I want this woman to swing on me so I can get the permission to, and it sounds terrible, but just to let out that anger.
I mean, it's a real thing. Like,
yes.
Take a shot at the title. I know how this is going to go, right?
Yes.
But you're not going to be the one to initiate it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And terrible either way, especially as a cop, but just admitting that. And he had told me after, he was like, hey, noticed you've been kind of getting a lot of fights lately. I was like, as simple as that, like, it's just checking me, especially for a student to say to their FTO.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
It made me take a step back and be like, what am I doing? I was like, I cannot let this like affect my work when our work is so important to just serving the community and everything, and peacefully and doing it with not a hot head. So yeah. I was not immune. I have never been immune, and I won't be in the future either. And I think it's important to know that.
No, that's such a good example. I mean, I love that. Let's inflate him. I mean, like, yeah, the confidence and the self-assuredness for him. And I know that you had a good relationship as a trainer. It's not like the stereotypical, all right, like, don't talk to me, boot, and I'm just going to tell you what's up, and you're going to take note and sink or swim. Like, absolutely not. That's not the culture we have. But I know that you guys have a good relationship. But yeah, like, that's a lot of confidence as a student officer to do that. And then there's an element of like peer support, and even before, he was on the team, right? So you have that just degree of just checking in and just bringing some to the light and calling it out, for lack of better word, like, not confrontationally, but for some, like, it's technically conflict. Like, it's not comfortable to have that conversation.
I wouldn't have done that as a student. I like to think I would, but I wouldn't have.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the point, is like, it has to be it could be from the lowest man on the totem pole to the chief of police and vice versa. So yeah, I did that. And I really like the concept that I'm able, no matter how checkboxy or whatever word you want to throw at it. I like that concept a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Tell us about SAU. You said you're coming up, or you're right around a year now. I know how passionate you are for that work. And I'm pretty sure I've said a couple times, at least on this show, where that's a role that I have so much utmost respect, because I can't imagine myself doing that work. I know it comes from such a place of passion for those that are in it, and it's heavy work, right? It's so heavy to interact with kids. You're a mom yourself. Can you tell us a little bit about what that role is like, and then maybe some of the things that are helping you navigate that?
Yeah, so it hasn't been a smooth road, like, to be completely frank. Very bumpy, but it is easily the hardest work, but also the most rewarding work. There's no feeling in police work like making a kid safe. And that goes the same for adult victims in their most vulnerable situations with domestic violence and sexual assault. And it's also, it's not even just rewarding just to arrest someone. it's rewarding and fulfilling to hear someone out, to know that someone has been heard, like, in their story. Because I felt like that. Like, I'm quite open about it, but I was a victim of sexual assault a few years ago. And knowing that these people can tell their story and not receive any judgment back is almost as important as the entire case. You don't necessarily need the closure of, like, an arrest to feel that closure. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. And so I started in June, hit the ground running. I've had many cases, dove in way too deep right at the beginning, did not balance my life well whatsoever. Definitely had mental and physical effects from that. I wasn't sleeping. I was pulling all-nighters because I felt responsible for these kids and these victims. And it's really hard to leave that at work. It took a lot of therapy, took a lot of self-reflection, few books, Four Agreements, if you ever read it. It's a really, really great book. I try and think of every single day, just to find, like, that peace, because it was affecting me so much. Like, I was not doing my best with my work. So I recognized, I was like, they need me to do my best. Therefore, I need to do the best for what's for me, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so day to day is like, I'll get a new case and I'll review, like, what the details are, and I'll meet with the victims, do interviews, set up a few plans for how we're going to go about arresting or prosecution, anything like that. I also try and train our patrol.
Yeah.
Make sure we're good from the start, because our success is fully dependent on patrol, and vice versa. Like, I mean, we have to work together better and build those bridges back up again.
Yeah. I love that you brought that up, because that's one of the notes I have is, like, you coming back in on a child case and, debriefing it, not just with, like, the crew that interacted with that case and some of these key elements that, like, problem, hey, like, this was extremely contributory towards the success of this case, or this is where things went, and here's things to look out for in real time, not just, hey, here's an email of sergeants for things to go over their crew, like, but, like, you put a face to it, you put details to it, and that was so impactful, right? I sat in on multiple briefings of that, and it's that ability and the willingness from the detective team to come across the parking lot. Like, it's, we are of that awkward size, I think, like, as you said, you can know everyone if people just make an effort, and people do. And I think that that's what's been fantastic since the time that we both came on, that is just a continued legacy. It's just people that truly care, and it's mentorship, right? It's you coming back in with your insights and elevating the team and helping everyone just kind of grow to this next level to the service of the people and to the victims.
Yeah. And I've been so lucky, because since I did a lot of those briefing trainings for that particular case, I get calls all the time from officers now, like, asking me questions, like, what they should do on their cases. That is such a fantastic feeling. I tell them, like, I'm like, call me anytime. Like, I would rather you, one, do this correctly at the beginning for the success of the case, but also just, like, broadening that knowledge. It's so important. And, like, I'm so glad to, like, be seeing the officers, like, responding that way and, like, truly caring. And it's no fault on them. Like, it's a complicated field. There's a lot of different rules, and it's really nice to see. I love seeing that.
Well, that's awesome. And I just want to rewind a little bit, as you talked about, the overload, like, coming in to the unit and just, like, diving deep. Like, there's no doubt that the people that do this work, like, they care so much. But I love how you recognized, and it took a little bit of time, but, like, it's a constant theme that we talk about here, which is, like, you're no good if you're not taking care of yourself, because that grind is not sustainable. And there might be calculated times to really turn up the grind, right? A specific case or series, but then you have to have intent and actually set something up, right? And so for some, it's therapy. For some, it's, like, religiously getting into their hobby or the gym. Or for some, it's like, no, you're gonna book a vacation with the family because you're dropping all this money. You're not canceling it. And I think that everyone needs to find their thing or a combination of, just to make sure that, yeah, you gotta put on your own, oxygen mask if you're gonna keep enduring this.
Yeah, treat yourself.
You got to. But I love that you're willing to say and share it, because that's the other layer of mentorship that we need to continue to elevate and make, like, we need to make it redundant in this culture, and we're a long way from that.
Oh yeah, and it keeps coming back to this. Like, I keep coming back to this theme is just being honest, like being honest with yourself and how you're doing. And like another way of looking at it, like we always say, like running code to help an officer. Like someone's in a fight, all you want to do is get there like as fast as you can. You push the boundaries when you're driving. I've done it. We've all done it. Fishtailing around like corners, but you are no help to anyone if you cannot make it there yourself.
100%.
Yep. And so it's taken time, like, and I'm far from perfect, but I've had to really, really focus on that since I've been up there. But again, it's the most rewarding thing I've ever done, without a doubt. I love it. It's hard, but I love it.
Well, I love it for you, and I really appreciate you sharing everything. And we're gonna get into part 2, so listeners can subscribe, download, look forward to that. But is there anything that you would leave the listeners with as far as like tidbits and things to keep in mind, things that like themes that have helped you?
I know as a female, I'll hit on this because I typically hit on this a bit more, and I did a little bit. I was asked recently, I had another kind of interview with recruiting, and they were like, what should females know if they want to apply? Like, if they want to be a cop here, wherever. And there's no special answer. All you have to know is that you can do it. That's it. That's all you have to know. Yeah, get fit, study and everything, but being a female has nothing to do with it. You'll be just fine. Just know that you can.
It's so simple sometimes, right? But like mindset is like the prevailing thing. Like, it's going to be okay. If you want it, you got it, right? But you just got to start and figure out where you're at, where you need to go, and then make a plan. Start just doing the thing.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
You can do it.
It's huge. And it's
for
like
the males too. They can do it
for the males too. And I would say like, yeah, that's a huge thing. Like every dip in confidence, from the point that I tested and I was like, oh, this isn't going well. And then I gained confidence, right? You're getting reps and then you're starting FTO and you're like, well, I've never been so bad at anything in my entire life.
Never.
And I'm an adult and like, what are we doing with our lives? And then you flip it, right? Like the thing that changed me from like failing FTO in block 1 to excelling like was almost overnight, but it was literally just mindset. I've told that story before, but like for the newer young listeners, what have you, or just newly assigned, to detectives, newly promoted, whatever, just trust yourself, right? Like invest in yourself, believe in yourself, like you owe it to you, like care about yourself, be introspective, and then just do the thing.
The power's in the mind.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Tessa. I really appreciate the time and all this wisdom that you've paid forward to the next gen, so you can feel good about that beyond what you're doing, clearly within the walls and for our culture.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for tuning into another episode of Blue Grit Radio. As always, support this community by subscribing, giving us a 5-star review, and following, liking, and sharing posts on Blue Grit Wellness on Instagram. You can reach me there or email me at bluegritwellness@gmail.com. Be well and stay gritty.